Historical European martial arts should be the most popular combat sport in the world. Mixed martial artists like to tell people that they're modern-day gladiators, but that's dumb. We're half-naked people punching each other with padded gloves, while HEMA guys are becoming medieval tanks and bashing each other in the head with war hammers. They're way closer to gladiators than we are. So, why doesn't anyone care? Why is MMA a worldwide multi-billion-dollar phenomenon while HEMA is largely practiced by white guys with questionable facial hair? And speaking of grooming tactics, let me introduce today's sponsor. No, I'm just kidding, we're not doing that. I can tell you how to make historical European martial arts more popular. And it starts by settling the debate about whether HEMA should be experimental archaeology or a combat sport. For those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, HEMA started out as a way to resurrect the dead martial arts revolving around European weaponry. Nerds pored over old manuscripts and got a community of people together to test the moves, fill the gaps, and discover how ye olde violence was actually practiced. By the way, if you're gonna start a HEMA channel, ye olde violence. You're welcome, that one's free. More recently, there's been a push towards winning competitions and engaging in the more sportive and competitive aspects of HEMA. Fundamentally, there's a divide between the history nerds that want to study old manuscripts and the athletes that want to win competitions.
We're starting to see a separation between those physical competitive types and those academic historical types.
There are obviously plenty of people in between. But do you think the general public is going to be more interested in gladiator battles or the different philosophies apparent in competing historical treatises? Here's a hint. It's the gladiator battles. If you want HEMA to be about experimental archaeology, that's fine, but you have to understand that nobody else on Earth will ever care. The only other people obsessed with learning a historically accurate reproduction of a 13th century Italian longsword manuscript are nerds. If you want HEMA to become a household name and have millions of people all over the world learn and appreciate your art, it has to be based around competitions, not nerd stuff. All right, but HEMA already has some competitions. Just searching on YouTube, you can find plenty of matches uploaded in just the past year. Some of them with dozens of views.
There are dozens of us. Dozens!
But the interest in these tournaments doesn't come close to the popularity of things like MMA, because HEMA doesn't know how to appeal to our dumb monkey brains. HEMA tournaments are largely the same, in that longsword fights longsword, rapier fights rapier, battle axe fights battle axe. And I simply don't care about those matchups. Ooh, I wonder who will win, the longsword or the longsword? Who do I root for? Why does it matter? See, humans are dumb, and our brains evolved for a pre-agricultural tribal society. Because of this, we're really good at becoming emotionally invested in anything we perceive as our tribe. If I watch a striker fight a grappler, I want the grappler to win because I started out grappling. If I see a longsword go against a spear, I want the longsword to win because I like longsword. If I see a rapier fight a rapier, I don't really care because them's the same. The reason people like MMA is because every fight represents a unique clash of style, culture, and personality. And fights are more popular when the fighters publicly hate each other. And is that because MMA fans just inherently like conflict? No, well, probably yes. But also because it signals to our dumb monkey brains that the fighters are part of enemy tribes and we have to support our side. Now, HEMA has tribalism in it. But it's not the interesting kind. It's the really nerdy kind. You read Hutton's Saber Treatise? Why would you bother with such a dilettante when you could be reading Henry Charles Angelou's Infantry Sword Exercise? I need you to understand how little anyone else cares about that. Audiences are not going to line up to see which lineage of saber fencing wins. We want something more concrete. For example, when I watched the Medieval Combat World Championships, I actually got to root for my country. If I were a bit more patriotic, I might have even watched to the end. And when I saw a video on kendo versus Olympic fencing, I actually cared a little because those at least represent different styles. But nobody watches either of those sports in isolation. Kaylin was on a Division I fencing team and fell asleep watching the Olympic fencing finals. Even people that do fencing can barely force themselves to watch it. It's very boring. And I want to be clear that simply jumbling the weapon matchups is not going to fix the problem. To normal people, all of HEMA is fundamentally the same tribe. All of your beefs with each other are so nerdy. But HEMA can learn an important lesson here from another combat sport that's way more popular despite being way more boring to watch. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You see, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is a slow and complicated system of fighting that's virtually indecipherable to a casual audience. Its tournaments are barely even interesting to people that do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And yet, it's an incredibly popular martial art with a global following. And the way they accomplished this is in 1993, they beat up all their competition. UFC 1 was a ploy by the people promoting Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to advertise its effectiveness by showing it beating a bunch of other martial arts systems. And it absolutely worked. For this moment in time, HEMA has the same advantage that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu had in the early 90s. It works better than most other systems out there, because there's at least a subset of the HEMA community that does take the combat and sportive aspect very seriously. As much as I like longsword, I inherently don't care about a longsword versus longsword fight. But everyone cares about a longsword versus katana fight. People on the internet have been arguing about that for years. Millions of people will watch discussions about longsword versus katana. Just people talking about it. How many do you think would watch an actual fight? If I was trying to promote HEMA, I would be challenging every kendo person in the world to a fight on a daily basis. Imagine a tournament that pits HEMA, kendo, Olympic fencing, Filipino martial arts, Haidong Gum Do, Krabi Krabong, and Kung Fu weaponry, and whatever else against each other in a mixed rules contest to find out what works. What HEMA needs is its own version of UFC 1. At least to me, that's way more interesting than anything HEMA is doing by itself. And matching up different weapons, arts, and cultures will automatically give people a tribe to root for. Basically, make the show Deadliest Warrior an actual contest and not based on nonsense. That show pretended that a handful of qualitative variables put into a computer could actually predict a fight. And it got 3 seasons. Imagine how much better it would be to see real practitioners of arts in actual contests, using humans' us versus them instinct to get them to care about your tournament. And winning the tournament gets people to care about your art. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioners will buy every striker versus grappler pay-per-view, but wouldn't watch an actual BJJ tournament to save their life. What HEMA needs to do is stop selling itself as experimental archaeology and start selling itself as the best and deadliest melee combat around. And I know there's a lot of HEMA practitioners out there that want to preserve the historical context and really care about the sportification of their art. But there comes a time in every nerd's life when they have to decide whether they want to win the internet argument or actually get invited to parties sometimes. There are history nerds concerned about style and lineage in every combat sport, but they're usually way in the background. However, in HEMA, these people are often the face of the movement, and that's why the general public doesn't take it seriously. If HEMA wants to get the recognition that we both think it deserves, the art needs to make a collective decision to stop bringing up 500-year-old manuscripts when you're trying to talk to the cool kids. You could literally be gladiators. Just do that.